next year. Brett writes this: more than 600 million Indians cast their ballots over the past 6 weeks in the largest Democratic election in the world. Donald Trump won. A week ago, several million Australians went to the polls in another touchstone election. Trump won. Trump's name, of course, was on none of the ballots in these recent elections. His critics should take no comfort in that fact. The common thread here isn't just right-wing populism. It's contempt for the ideology of them before us. It's a revolt against the people who say, pay an immediate invisible price for a long-term and invisible good. It's hatred of those who think they can define that good while expecting someone else to pay for it. This is a potent form of politics, and it's why I suspect Trump will be reelected next year, barring an economic meltdown or foreign policy shock. So we'll let you dig in a little bit more on your argument here, but this is something I've seen and heard. I think there are a lot of progressives maybe lulling themselves into a false sense of security that Donald Trump has low approval ratings and there's no way he can win again, having forgotten the lessons of 4 years ago. But what do you see in 2020 that shows you so clearly he could do it again?
Well, look, just to be clear, this article is not a wish, it's a warning.
Right.
And the warning is that there is a right-wing populist wave that is sweeping the world. It's not just Australia and India. You saw the elections in Europe, elections in Brazil, in the Philippines. Wherever you look, right-wing populists are doing well. In fact, Trump is doing rather less well than other right-wing populists because his personality is so toxic to so many people. But the left has a serious problem in that many of the themes that they seem to be associated with are themes that people feel put them, someone else, something else before the us, the nation, the majority. So whether it's the politics of abolishing ICE or the politics, as in France, of asking relatively poor people to bear the costs of climate change action, all of that is bad news for the left. And the left has to find a way to start speaking on behalf of middle classes and working classes against what they see as threats to their economic well-being, threats to their social status and cultural identity. The left used to know how to do this much better than the right. It used to be the right that spoke for the billionaires and the one percenters and so on. But I feel like the left has lost that language, that ability in recent years. And I think that, you know, as with 2016, when there was so much confidence this guy can't win, that's confidence that Democrats, liberals should check, because the tide of history here is not on their side.
So I certainly agree that President Trump can win again. It would be foolish for liberals to discount that. But my question is this: I mean, you're drawing lessons from things that have happened, or elections that have happened around the world. Just a few months ago here at home, the Democratic Party had a very strong midterm elections, and there seemed to be trends going their way that could continue that way in 2020. So why not take a lesson from that? Why shouldn't Democrats be confident in that?
You know, that's a perfectly fair point. But look, bear in mind, Barack Obama took a, what did he call it? A shellacking. In 2010, President Clinton took another thumping in 1994. So midterm elections as predictors of what happens in the general is very different. Other fact, which I just don't think gets enough play, like it or not, well, I think you like it, 3.6% unemployment. Yep. Consistently high growth rates are typically the recipes by which presidents get reelected.
Yep. To Jonathan's point, though, I would say that the EU parliamentary election, I guess it was Sunday, it did point in the trend line of increased turnout and increased youth participation that mimicked what happened in the 2018 midterms. And so I do wonder if we are going to see more energy among people who maybe wouldn't be as excited to turn out. But still, I agree with the broad contours of what you're saying.
For sure. Gene Robinson, jump in.
Well, I read Brett's column, of course, and I thought it was a really good column as a warning, but it's just a couple of questions. I mean, it seems to me that that perhaps a lesson of the European election, it seems to me that the center got clobbered. It was the center more that got clobbered than the left specifically, and I wonder if we're not seeing a bit of that globally, that the center seems to be taking it on the chin. There's definitely a rise in the far right, but I'm not sure that the left is as moribund and as clueless as it seems to be. They are speaking to people, and just look at our Democratic race now, and there are a couple candidates who are really speaking to people, including speaking to Trump voters, like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. That doesn't mean that should be the nominee of the Democratic Party, but I'm just wondering if it isn't sort of a hollowing out of the center that we're seeing.
No, it's Gene makes. I think you're making a really very important point. Another point I make in the column, though, is that center-right populism, or excuse me, far-right populism, seems to have somewhat more potency than far-left populism. And a lot of what I sense is that a lot of working-class or middle-class voters, ultimately, if you break it down, I suspect that the far right takes 55 to 45. I'm guessing at those numbers there, which is why you see this consistent sweep to the right globally. We're part of that global pattern.
Now, I will say this, though, Mika, following up on what Gene said, we may actually be ahead of the curve of what we're seeing now in India, what we're seeing, all the things that Brett brilliantly bring up. Because our voters have been put on notice. You look at Doug Jones's election, I think one of the most remarkable things as far as voting trends go is that black women in central Alabama, not in an off-year election, right, in a special election, came out and voted against the Republican candidate in numbers that even exceeded those for Barack Obama in 2008 and 2012. You look at what women did across America, in Northern Virginia and Southern California, going out, standing in line, standing in the rain to vote against Trump supporters in Congress. I think America has been awakened to the dangers of this short-term thinking. I think conservatives, I think highly educated women in suburbs, they're gone from the Trump Republican Party forever. So I think we need to take Brett's warning. It is a global trend. I am hopeful, though, as Gene said, no one will be lulled to sleep in 2020 by Donald Trump's lies and misinformation.
Not. I will say that traveling and talking to people, I'm still surprised at how many people are just so mad at Washington and they don't care. And they plan on voting for him.
Yeah.
They don't care what he does. They just are mad at Washington. It's still there. Bret Stephens, thank you.
By the way, Mika, a lot of those people that still say that, they're white. They're white.
They are.
They aren't black voters who saw Charlottesville, who saw the other things that Donald Trump has done, who called leaders of all black countries in the Caribbean and Africa, said they were asshole countries because they were not white countries. Or if you're a woman, if you see one misogynistic statement and action after another, white males may still be saying that, but it is a shrinking electorate for Donald J. Trump.
Bret Stephens, thank you very much for coming on this morning. We'll be